would you?
Okay, here we are with Elaine Panagopoulos Vlachos Ward. Elaine, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
So,
having me.
You and your family were pioneers, members of this early church. So tell us about something about your parents.
My parents were both American born. My father was born in Springfield, my mother in Boston, Cambridge. My mother grew up in Cambridge. So many of the early founding families of St. Demetrius came from the cathedral. We came from Cambridge. My mother grew up there. She was married in the Cambridge church. I was baptized there. Cambridge was different from the cathedral in that there was a large Greek presence in Cambridge. They all went to high school together, to church together, sang in the choir together. They were a very, very tight-knit family.
St. Constantine and Helen.
St. Constantine and Helen, I'm sorry.
Yes. No, it's fine, yes.
So my parents, who were American born, wanted me to have a Greek Orthodox identity. So they really went above and beyond. They went back and forth for Sunday school, for junior choir practice, for junior Goya, for cheerleader. I was a cheerleader for the church basketball team.
Oh my goodness.
It was exhausting.
Were the yells in Greek?
No. No, but there was a strong Greek presence in the church,
Yes.
which was hard for me because I didn't really have that Greek background. Second generation, you stop speaking Greek at home. In any case, and I couldn't go to Greek school because it was right after American school, and
Yeah.
it was not possible.
What were your parents doing professionally?
My Uncle Nick, who was
Yes.
also a founder of the church, had a restaurant, and my mother ran the front half, he ran the back half, and my father was working for another company.
Okay.
So that they were all local community. My parents were local community, my uncle not so much.
And
We lived in Newton. The restaurant was in Newton.
Oh, where was it?
Chef's Restaurant, Newton Corner. When they built the Mass Pike,
Yes.
they went right over the
Oh.
restaurant. So that was the
Okay,
end of it.
briefly, how about your grandparents? I'm interested in your Greek roots, then we move on to...
My father's parents were married before they came to this country, and they were born in, well, it's now called Ellinikon, but back when it was called, I'm blanking. It had a Turkish name, which they weren't happy with.
where was it about?
Peloponnesos.
Peloponnesus, okay. Ellinikon,
My
okay,
mother's
I'll find it.
parents met here. So her mother was from Lefkada, and her father was from Messenia, I think.
Yes,
I'm not
yes, okay,
quite
Kalamata,
He
yeah,
had
okay.
already died, and I
Okay.
don't know much about him.
So what brought them here? Your grandparents?
I think it was just looking for a new life, new opportunity.
Yes. So, okay, we're now in 1950s, late 1950s. You're in Cambridge, and your parents are finding out that there is an interest in a new church. And then what happens?
There were a small group of people who decided there should be a new church, which was pretty daring because there wasn't a Greek population in Newton, Wellesley, Weston. So that was different from the other church communities. I mean, there were Greeks, but not
Right.
a big presence. They got the telephone books. So they got hold of the Newton telephone book, And they went through the Newton telephone book looking for Greek names.
All right.
So Panagopoulos, you think maybe
Sticks
that's a
out,
Greek
yes.
name.
Absolutely.
So my parents came home and they said they want to build a church here in Newton. And so they were in, they were going to participate. So that was the beginning.
And then tell me about, okay, we're getting together, meetings and stuff like that. They find the Methodist Wesley Newton Church that is moving out, and they say, that's where we're going to buy.
That's where they're going to
So
buy.
they became the Greek Orthodox Church of Wesley Newton.
It was so exciting.
So exciting. But then we had to name it.
Ah,
Yes, can we talk about the naming?
I wasn't there that night.
Oh my,
I stayed home and did homework.
Oh.
It was a Sunday night. But that was a free-for-all. My parents were there. Everybody talks about it. It was the Wild West. You had to pay for your vote.
absolutely.
And there was a battle going on between someone wanted Hagia Sophia,
Yes,
and there were quite a few Dimitri.
yes, that's
the
exactly what Diane said,
parish.
yes.
So it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it was kind of even Steven. And they were making money. The longer it went
Yes,
on,
yes,
the
yes.
more money they
Of
were
course,
making.
yeah, yeah.
And then finally somebody, and I've forgotten his name, threw down an extra $1,000
Hoi!
and said, this is it. We're going to put an end to it. It's going to be St. Demetrius. So we begin. And in the beginning, we never knew who the priest was going to be. We didn't have a priest. It was a different priest every week. Nobody knew anybody. So we invented coffee hour. We were the first church to ever have coffee hour because we didn't know each other. So everybody went downstairs, had a cup of coffee, and got to know each other. I want to tell you about the first Easter.
Yes,
It's one of my strongest memories of the early years of the church. I remember that they had an icon screen, obviously with the icons, but it was a plywood icon screen, and every inch was covered with flowers. And what I remember was the scent of the gardenias. It was magnificent. This church never did things in a small way. They were always over the top with whatever they could do for their church. I went, as the 60th anniversary was coming up, I started talking to the old timers.
yes.
No one else remembered this. I was horrified. Finally, John Anton said, yes, I know you're right because my uncle built that plywood wall. So that was correct. But Helen Makris, who was a founder, she and George Makris were founders of the church. Helen Makris tells the story. She was about to give birth to her second or third child, right at that time. And her husband, George, went down to Connecticut. There was a church in Connecticut that was buying a new icon screen, and they were gifting their old icon screen to us. And so it must have been Friday night. George drove all the way down to Connecticut with a few of the other men, drove all the way back, and there were people at the church waiting. And I think in the middle of the night or early morning hours, they put that icon screen up.
Unbelievable.
So finally, just last Sunday when I was talking to her, it clicked. What I was remembering was Good Friday. Flowers, epitafio.
Yes.
The icon screen came in for the first Easter.
Resurrection.
In those 24 hours, they pulled it in and put it up. Can you imagine the commitment? They wanted it there. And they literally stayed up all night, I'm sure. Just a wonderful story
Great story.
of their commitment to the church.
So, what else do you remember about your mates? And we're talking about Goya, kids are getting together, and we saw our friend Cindy from Atlanta.
Yes.
She describes what you did.
Uh,
So,
uh,
what do you recall?
Let me give you one other memory that I
Yes.
think is kind of funny, and then I'll go to that. The Azure Ball.
Yes.
It became a tradition very early on, and I have a picture at home somewhere of the Antons and my parents in the buffet line. The Azure Ball, very early on, became a tradition.
Why Azure? Where did that come from?
I don't know.
Okay.
It was held at the country club just down the street from the church, Woodland Country Club.
Woodland Country Club, yes.
We were there recently for the golf tournament, and I said to Father Cremidis, this is where they used to have the Azure Ball. And he said, no, it's too small. And I said,
At
we
the
were
time,
small.
yes, exactly,
We
yeah.
were small. They all fit into that tiny facility. There was a raffle. This is the fun part. There was a raffle. They were raffling off a Cadillac,
Oh,
which in the early 1960s was the car.
absolutely.
This was a huge pink Cadillac with enormous tail fins. And the tickets were $100 a piece,
Ooh, at that time.
which in 1960 was a big amount of money. My Uncle Peter bought a ticket, Peter Georgantis,
Yes.
and I was just talking to my cousin Louie, and he said they were at home on Saturday night. They get a telephone call, and they said, we're at the Azure Ball. You just won the Cadillac.
Uncle George?
Uncle Peter.
Uncle Peter won the Cadillac?
Georgantis.
Georgantis. He won the Cadillac.
He won the Cadillac, and for years, every family event, there was that pink Cadillac. But it was wonderful. Again, larger than life, dramatic. That's the style of this church. The Goya. You wanted
Yes.
to know about the Goya. I have snatches of memories, so that I don't remember always the exact place, but I have the memory. I remember many outings. We went, it was a small group. I don't know how many of us there were.
She said about 20. Was that small? Yeah.
I was just going to say 20. I consider that small, but there were about 20 of us to start with. We would meet in the church hall for Goya meetings.
Friday nights.
Friday nights. I remember we went on a skiing trip.
Yes.
And that was great fun. I learned to snowplow. I was not a skier. We went to the beach, and I have pictures of that beach party.
Oh, excellent.
We had, the boys made a pyramid. So there would be 3 on the bottom, 2 boys on top, and then I have a picture of Cindy on the very top and of myself on the very top of those pyramids at the beach. So I remember the beach outings.
Bowling?
I don't remember. Yes.
Yes, bowling.
Yes. I had forgotten about that. You're right.
Yes.
There was bowling.
Well,
I'm trying to remember. It's hard to remember. They would be big church events. We would go to
some church outings.
church outings
Yes.
in
Falmouth. One remembers, Cindy remembered Falmouth. I don't know why Falmouth, but
I don't know.
she remembers fondly that. Okay. What do you and your family recall fondly about? What priests, for example?
There was Sunday school,
Yes.
which was, we all went to Sunday school. It was hard for the older children. In the beginning we had Sunday school, and some seminarians would come in and teach.
Right.
But after a while, it wasn't very reliable. The older children didn't always show up. The seminarians didn't always show up. So I joined the choir. Professor Savas, Professor
Savas,
Jim
yes.
Savas, who taught at Framingham State,
yeah.
was the choir director. And his family showed up to support him. I think he had 3 sisters and a niece that played the organ.
Wonderful. There you go.
So that was the backbone of the choir. George Tremus, Cindy's father, Cindy and Joanne's
Yes.
father, was in the choir. Jim Kritzis joined when I
Yes.
joined. And that was wonderful because I learned
Do you
a
still
lot.
sing in the choir?
No, I don't have a particularly good voice. And it wasn't easy to get by Mr. Savas. I had to study,
Oh, I see.
be an understudy for quite a few months before he allowed me to join. Today, the Kondakis family is the backbone of the choir. And
Yes.
there are quite a few Kondakis members in the choir. So I wanted to add that in. We had, as I said, did I tell you about the sing-along?
No.
No. That was another church event. I don't know why this sticks out in my mind. We're in the church hall, all of us, adults.